Greetings, my Israelite brothers and sisters, whether you're adopted heirs, joint heirs, natural, spiritual, you know what I normally say. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button right over here someplace. Um, you know, this this video is going to be titled, um, I see the picture, but my spouse doesn't. What now? I see the picture. I have understanding, but my spouse doesn't. What now? This is a very serious, and I'm doing this in response to a question or comment that came to the email, and I invite all of you all. If I do a video and you got a follow up question, send me an email at bethelhouseofgod@gmail.com. This particular question did not come as a result of anything that I posted, but they wanted some clarity and some help. And it's real, 2016 seems like that I came across a lot of people that came into the truth of what's going on. The fact that we're Israel, the fact that we're, and I've always kept the Sabbath, the feast days, eating clean. I got a broader understanding of about who we are and how to process that. And I got also a more broader understanding of the feast days and what they really mean, that they are a plan to salvation. And there are some of you that come into the truth that Christmas is a lie, Easter is a lie. It's all pagan worship that was brought into the church during the Emperor Constantine era, who was trying to commingle religion politically and get people to be on the same page. Is something that happened. You can read about that. I do a lesson on that. You can read that and follow that lesson at a later date. But what happens when you and your spouse are in the same denomination, and one of you come into the clarity of the truth that you can't eat the pig anymore, and the other one doesn't see it? You come into the reality that December the 25th doesn't even exist in the Bible. It's pagan. Bunny rabbits don't lay eggs. It's all pagan. It was creeped into the church, and is strictly idolatry that even God warned Israel not to do. And he was angry at them for doing it. He was angry at them for being like the other nations, taking on pagan practices and mixing them in like Israel did. He was upset with this. What do when you come into the knowledge and your spouse doesn't? How do you handle that? And the reality is, it can be very difficult. It could be a challenge. I mean, you can have a wife, and you're seeing that you don't eat this way or eat that way, and your wife wants you to eat dinner, and she's got the big ham on the table. She wants to know. She put a lot of effort. She put her foot into that ham. She put her foot into it. She put her foot into those baby back ribs. And you're not eating. It's going to cause some confusion. Okay? It's going to cause some very much confusion. And what do you do if you're a spouse or you're a wife and your husband wants you to cook this stuff? Okay? You're going to have some problems. It's a challenge. How do you handle that? You've had a perfect marriage. Everything was been going fine. You both were, going to Sunday Mass. You both been going to sunrise service. You've been doing this, and the marriage has been perfect. But one of you decided to get into the Word and to study for yourself. And one of you decided that in reading, you come across this Bible in a total different way, because you're reading now. And when you're reading, You're finding out certain things that you've been hearing across the pulpit is not necessarily the truth. How do you handle that? This is reality. This is for real. Okay? This is happening in somebody's house right now. Somebody says, I believe God, but I don't believe this Bible because this Bible was used to keep us in slavery. But this very Bible you found out is your history. And you was not permitted to read because perhaps it was all about you. And the day you learn to read it is the day that you find out who you are. How do you handle that? But the other spouse don't want anything to do with it because people were killed. People were put into slavery. People were beheaded. All because of this. And they don't want anything to do with it. How do you handle that now? This is a very serious question. How do you handle that for years? The last 10 years of your marriage, you've been putting up a Christmas tree right in the corner of the living room. And all of a sudden, one of the spouses say, I don't want to do that no more. Well, why not? Jeremiah, the 10th chapter. These are pagan holidays. Look here on the internet. Read it for yourself. Do the research and you show it to them. And they say, oh, don't listen to that. Don't listen to that Johnson guy. How are you going to handle that? This is reality. This is real. And it can put you in a very tight situation of how do you handle your spouse who doesn't believe at the level that you believe in. So I want to address that. So the best way to address that is go to the scriptures. So let's go to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter. And I'm going to do some reading. I won't take long, but I got to do some reading, okay? 7th chapter, verse 1. Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife have not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband have not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and praying, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your inconveniencies. But I speak this by permission. I hope I said that word right. I speak this by permission and not of commandment. For I would that all men, this is the part that he speaks by permission and not by commandment. For I would that all men were even as I myself, but every man have his proper gift of God, one after this manner and another after that. I say, therefore, to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I, and that means alone. But if, and he says he's doing that by permission, not by commandment, because we know that God wanted a man to have a woman and wanted them to be fruitful and he wanted them to multiply. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. Now, verse 10. And unto the married I command, yet not I, not me, but this part is the Lord. Let not the wife depart from her husband, but and if she depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. Now, when I read that part, I got to bring in the law, okay, which is back in Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter, because I want to read this to you. When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it to her, give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. And if the latter husband hate her, in other words, she gets married again, and for some reason that second husband hates her, and write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and send her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, he dies and she becomes a widow, which took her to be his wife, this is law. The first husband, the former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife. After that she is defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord, and thou shalt not cause a man to sin, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. Now, why do I bring that up? Because we're getting into decisions that people have to make. And I've seen people get a divorce and they go their separate ways, and the wife gets married to another guy. That doesn't work out because she realizes that the first husband wasn't so bad, because, man, it wasn't so bad what he did. I mean, he was only just trying to get me to serve the Most High. And she goes back to the first husband. Cannot do that. According to Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter, once you remarry, you cannot go back to your former husband. So keep that in mind. Now, he says this, and unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord. Let not the wife depart from her husband. And if she depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. In other words, you can be reconciled to him if you don't marry somebody else. That's why I read that Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter. And let not the husband put away his wife. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother have a wife that believe not. Now this is Paul saying, I'm giving you wisdom. This is not any type of command. This is what I'm giving you through wisdom. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother have a wife that believe not. In other words, there was two different situations happening here. Paul, who was sent to the Gentiles, was out teaching. And there were a lot of occasions where he's speaking to families, husbands and wives. And one of them would say, man, I see Jesus. I see this. I understand this. And you know what? I'm a believer now. Okay? Because we know Paul was sent to the Gentiles. But not all in all perfect situations did both spouses come. Okay? That just didn't happen. So Paul says, but to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother have a wife that believe not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath an husband that believe not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. And there's a reason for that, because the strong must bear the infirmities of the weak. So if you have a spouse and you've come into the truth, but when you got married, you both were celebrating Christmas. When you got married, you both were eating pork. You all were both eating baby back ribs. You were high-fiving each other, giving each other, sharing lobster tails and all like that. And all of a sudden, one of you come into the truth. You need to rethink this. I've seen so many people say, I want to divorce them because They eat this way and they celebrate Christmas and Easter, but you went into it that way. So the wisdom is this. Let's read verse 14. Because especially if your spouse is saying, listen, I don't believe like you believe. And I understand that you over there into that belief over there. Okay? That's fine. But you're still my wife and I love you. But I just don't want to go through this every day. I don't want to talk about it every day. Okay? And if your spouse says that to you, then you should stay. And here's why. Verse 14. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. Now, it doesn't mean that because you living right, they're not going to be judged. That's not what this is saying here. Doesn't mean that, oh, okay, my mom and daddy was saved and they were in the Lord and they died in Christ, so therefore that salvation inheritance passes down to me and I can do anything I want to. That's not what verse 14 is saying. What verse 14 is saying is that if you are there with them through time, through learning, they too can be sanctified as you. You have to show them. You have to teach them. You have to abide by the duties of a married spouse. Okay? You can't say, I don't want to have sex with you because you're eating pork. Okay? You can't do that. Okay? You can't say, if you put up the Christmas tree, don't come and sleep with me. You can't do that. Okay? Because what you're going to be doing at the beginning of the chapter, you're going to be causing Satan to tempt them. So you still got to render due benevolence. But over time, with loving kindness have I drawn thee. And that's the best answer I can give you. Okay? If they want to stay, you should stay. Because they can be sanctified by what your lifestyle is. They really can. And you have to, it takes a wise to win souls. So you're going to have to sit, you're going to have to teach them, you're going to have to bear with them. The strong must bear the infirmities of the weak. And you're going to have to go through this because they can be changed by your personality. They can be changed by prayer and fasting, okay? Because I believe in prayer and fasting, it can change the situation, and it can. And he goes on to say, but if the unbelieving depart, if they say, listen, I'm sorry, I don't want to be married to you no more. No Christmas, no Easter, no baby back ribs. If you're not going to participate in those things with me, like we started off, it says, if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shouldst save thy husband? How do you know? You might be able to save your husband. Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? Okay? You don't know that. And you very well could do that. You don't know. But if they say they want to go, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you could do in those cases. And sometimes, unfortunately, you may encounter that. But if they want to stay, pray about the situation, leave the situation alone, and just pray and fast. And when the right time and moment comes, have the discussion and let it be a two-way discussion. okay? And always use scriptures to um, allow things to articulate. Let the scriptures do the speaking. And or find a channel, find a pastor that teaches from the scriptures and shows them what Christmas and Easter is from a scriptural standpoint, and let that do the work for you. Okay, I've got lessons on this channel pertaining to Christmas and Easter and eating clean. Let that do the work for you. I hope this has this question came in, and I hope this gives you some scriptorial advice. This is the best advice I can give, is according to the scriptures. Thank you for tuning in on this question. Um, Continue to tune in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Peace.